I actually thought, with Trump ducking out of the Iran deal and feelings in the world at the moment, this could be a good moment for this review. So then, I will start with a quote which I feel is wholly appropriate to witches today who wish to be awake. We must reject the values of our culture and actively oppose them with the visions we garner from dreaming. This is also a critique of those witches who simply think it is a matter of listening to witch-style music, wearing witch-style clothes, and thereby achieving nothing at all. It does not matter if you listen to black metal or Bach. The proof of witchcraft is the rejection of the values of this culture and the actions that you then take. Where you sleep is where you dream from. This book is the dark thunder that rolls and cracks beneath us, a calling to arms. It's written in regards to traditional craft rather than Wicca, though all who find the craft's history and also the present day predicaments interesting could definitely benefit from reading it. I loved it. I thought that some parts were difficult, as they should be, really. It's not just a call to rise up and fight for the earth, but to remember our history and our reality now, as it was, as it is, as it shall be. As modern witches, we tend to get lost in arguments about who's practicing true tradition, forgetting that none of us are, and it really nods to that. I believe true tradition is defined by an unchanged practice followed by 3 generations or more. And so most people wouldn't be living tradition as such. We feel we need to water down our craft to be more acceptable in today's society. And this book, I'll show it to you again, this one here, is a war drum, a stirring song that makes you wish to rise from your chair and brandish the magic that you have. It aims to break into the arguments about whose tradition is oldest and grab our shoulders, pointing straight to the poignant episodes of history from which we have taken our name. If you sign Love and Light and you shy away from things bad, then this may not be for you, though that's an assumption on my part. For we should know love causes deep and unhealable wounds, and light can burn cities to the ground and swallow us in flame. If you say love and light, acknowledging those things fully, the harm and the good, each time, winding those into the depths of that phrase as it falls from your lips, then this book may be for you. Peter Gray has essays online, including Rewilding Witchcraft, which is definitely worth a read, no matter who you are. Can be, lots of people would find it difficult. You could describe a grieving process if it's not an issue that you've thought about before. So that's Rewilding Witchcraft. And his partner, Peter Gray's partner, Alkistis Dimesh, sorry, I don't know what's going on with my mouth today, can be seen doing Butoh dance. It's really sabbatic, it's beautiful. Both executions of their art forms are intensely powerful and deeply rich. I suggest both for the flavour and feel of them, and I will link them in the word box below. This book is like the dream you awake from that leaves you feeling shaken for the rest of the day. It's also a sensual description of Sabbat. It does not shy away from the nightmare, the ideas of sex, menstrual blood, and eating human flesh. All of them are covered. It gives description as well as personal experience. At times the text can feel quite dense, not at all in a flat, boring way, but more as if you're wearing a garment that's dripping so heavily with jewels that you need to sit down. Something I'm sure we can all relate to. It's difficult to describe because it's not difficult to read. It's not that sort of dense at all. it's more the style. It's almost like Daniel Schulke. I don't know if you have read him. That's spelt Schulke. If any of you've read any of his work, then it reminds me of his style a bit. Though Peter Gray's voice is different to that. It's just the style that's similar. And Peter Gray, I find more lyrical in what I have read, really. But obviously they've both written quite extensively, I think. If you're looking for something which is academically strong, but gives a history flavour without getting caught up in dates and so on, and losing sight of the modern day through that, then this is a good choice of book. It doesn't lose sight of the modern day. Everything is right there. All of Gray's points are drawn back to now, to the fall that we are witnessing around us. And he's very well read. The poetical prose gives breath to any moment that he wishes us to see. And there's a bibliography at the end, a select bibliography. It's lovely to see a bibliography, giving the reader a chance to explore ideas themselves, tasting the original materials themselves instead of being spoon-fed. As a society, we tend to be so spoon-fed, and I feel that it was an issue dealt with so prominently in this book. Sorry about the noise. We're having our lawn mown. Yes, so prominently in this book, and something I strongly agree with in so many ways. It sickens my heart when I see all those around me unable to take a train without staring at a screen. I've always loved gazing at the hills whipping by, at the empty houses with their jarring mouths calling and pulling at you as the train slows. It's just a wonderful experience. And as a writer, I've been asked how I think of the things I write about before. And the truth is that I turn off my gadgets and I let my mind think. I let it play. I look out the train window, sit in a wood, take a bath, let poetry and opinion and song flow in me as it wants. I cannot believe the amount of people who tell me some absolute bullshit as fact. When I ask where they heard it, the answer's almost always Facebook or another form of social media. Facebook's pretty bad for it, I think, because a lot of people post and share articles which are horrific. I don't know if any of you watching this video are English or British, but the amount of racist articles showing up on Facebook at the moment just is shocking. The anti-immigration, the hatred, the Islamophobia, it's awful, and that terrifies me, and I think people are just being brainwashed. If I could give a single gift, like the fair folk at a cradle, then I would give the gift of curiosity. I think always questioning is so important, always asking and seeking and not simply taking what you're told. That would definitely be my single piece of advice to everyone. Question. And that's really helped in my life, because it's my son has a kidney problem, and without continuously questioning in his babyhood, we wouldn't have found the answers. And if I had taken what some doctors had told me, there would have been very different outcomes. So question, always question. And that brings us back to the book. I'm sorry, I have strong feelings about questions. I think Apocalyptic Witchcraft picks up and encourages the need for questions, moving away from screens, flashing images, and lies, so many believe lies. And that's so vital in a book that tackles how witchcraft today should be, because we're not living in the past. Even in the past, you need to question. But this is how witchcraft needs to be. It's written from a sabbatic style witchcraft view, referring to the goddess Inanna. We join Peter Gray in some of his journey. We see from his eyes some of his pilgrimages. However, we also trace our own steps back through a history of our ancestors, not of blood but of craft. It's a wonderful resource for further reading, mentioning lots of different books, poems, names. Really, really good. It's not a how-to book at all. It doesn't contain rituals in that way. It's a pathway into a labyrinth that you walk yourself, and it's a key that can open you. It's not the sort of book that you put down and forget. Its ideas slide into your head and awake from slumber to slither around your mind at 3 a.m. when you're contemplating life, the universe, and everything. I think some people would find it too much. Those who don't want difficult ideas of an apocalyptic world where some cannot or refuse to see the end is coming, should know that that's exactly what this book's about. It reminds us that we are innately nature, and nature is us. If nature is damaged and dying all around us, then what is that telling us? It reminds us to reclaim ourselves by sticking our hands in the dirt and rolling in we. You think that's a joke, but now I've got to try and find it. Sorry, there was an interruption. The 1 AD Satyricon of Gaius Petronicus tells of a man becoming a wolf by stripping naked and urinating in a circle around his clothes before running into the woods. This is done because male urine contains testosterone and marks territory in exactly the same way wolves do. The nudity is stripping away of the socialized self. The man, become wolf, is therefore excluded from the circle of humankind. The setting for the scene is a graveyard at midnight under a full moon. Skipping a bit. Other accounts have men rolling in the dirt to become the animal which last did so. We see this behaviour with dogs when they roll in fox urine. Perhaps this law is imitative of that behaviour. And after that, Peter Gray actually goes on to talk about the importance of smell, and how actually a lot of the time the actual effect, the limbic effect and the magical effect of smell is forgotten. You know, perfumes are taken lightly, they're not. The real deep meanings of them are quite forgotten. So he does go on to talk about that and how we can influence ourselves and our magic through that. He talks of poetry and dream and myth, dark and devious and delicious. If you love Ted Hughes, then you'll love the chapter covering him. It's wonderfully done. Sorry for that break, it's actually a new day. So Ted Hughes, you'll love the chapter on him if you like poetry and Ted Hughes. I wanted to restart with the quote, "We are the disenchanted generation and much in need of poetry." Yes, I don't agree with all of the views expressed in the book, but this one I absolutely agree with. I feel this in my blood deeply. As Peter Gray writes, "It is the poets who are hunting the myth, the song, the spell to awaken England from dreamless sleep." Poetry, like nature, has lost value in the modern world, yet poetry, like nature, can bring deep healing. It can reveal revelations that strike pain and terror into our hearts. Yet it can open our hearts, like Datura under the moon. And I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to when you read something and suddenly everything clicks into place. or a spark in you is lit and you think, yes, why did I not think of that before? How could I not have seen it? There's a theme in Irish myth of madness bringing magic, bringing gifts like prophecy. Now, because my witchcraft is kind of interlinked with a lot of the old ideas of the Celts and the ancient Irish people, and it's in my ancestry and my husband's, that's quite important to me, and it's a theme that can be found in many myths across the world, actually, or of madness and magic being linked somehow. You know, the idea of the strange lady staggering around, talking to the spirits around her, is not fitting in with the rest of society, being seen as crazed, and whether or not that is crazed is kind of up to the individual to decide. Anyone who has been mad, dealt with madness, with insanity, with real psychotic mental illness, knows it's painful, even without psychosis, actually, the influence of those deep and damaging emotions. And they know that actually it often comes from pain. And I don't say that lightly, for madness, like witch, is another word I have reclaimed only through experience. I think in many ways there are two pathways that are followed after severe pain, the kind of deep trauma that rips apart your being. One is the unspeakable path, where you're eaten by your pain, and I've watched people suffer and die from the trauma that they went through. Or live a life where no respite is truly found. And the second is that it reforms you in some way, and you know, like a phoenix, you're reborn from the ashes of your trauma. But first you have to burn it. And that may sound frightening or disheartening, especially the first pathway. But I do think it needs to be remembered that trauma can have this first path, and without seeing that it can have that first path, we cannot help those travelling through trauma to find the second path where healing lies. I'm not saying those reformed always completely rid themselves of the pain. I'm not saying that the reformation is always, you know, a complete life change or anything like that, but there are big changes, and the pain can be used in a positive way, coped with, worked through, burnt to the ground, so you can rise from those ashes. And in magic, this can be a really powerful thing. It can give you a different viewpoint as well, a different way of looking at the world, which people who haven't had that deep pain, they don't always have that same ability to view the world in the way that people that have do. And I think as well, there's an ability to know yourself. You know, what can you cope with? What have you coped with? And therefore, what can you cope with? I know so many other people who have taken from their pain the gifts it has given. After a battle they feared they may not win. Poetry in this book is described as getting back off the canvas when the fight is already lost. And of course there's much more to it. There's many deeper layers. It's an onion, guys. It's an onion. So there's many deeper layers, many onion layers to what I've spoken about and what's in the book. But that connection that was mentioned and that I feel and that's in myth has really struck a chord with me, as many of us in the witchy community have gone on our difficult journeys and come out reformed in some way, often still bleeding, but beginning to recognise the gifts our ordeal can bring. And there are obviously a lot of popular YouTubers who, in the witchcraft community, who have said about this. And, you know, there's Kellyanne Maddox, Joey Morris, for example, are two who I can just think of straight away. But there'll be, you know, several, oh God, I don't even know the numbers, but you know, so many others. And there's this revelation that Gray describes, that nature is not malevolent. Nature is other. No one chooses to be shaman. It is thrust upon us. I think that's a really important concept. The way our world or society now is not conducive to healing. We're losing connection and personifying nature and the natural world as a cruel enemy. But nature has balance. Where is balance if all is good? Where is learning if no questions are asked and everything is an answer? How is a baby birthed without pain? And I tell you, in the pain of birth, there often comes an understanding that, of course, you would suffer it and worse if you could protect that child. It could be an initiation of mind, of spirit, and of purpose, not simply a change of occupation from, you know, not mother to mother. It's so much more. And I also think that this is often why a woman bonds with that baby so, I don't want to say easily, but very quickly comparatively to a father, and is so in tune with them because they've had that painful initiation. There is a deep sense of balance, even justice in this concept. Men become wise only through being wounded this deeply. The skulls speak from the riverbed, a resonant choral that turns uncertain beneath our feet. We begin to recite, and with no little urgency, our own composed love songs, a spell to awaken England. That's from page 65, and I just think that quote is amazing. Peter Gray, like Gemma Gary, speaks of a devil who much of witchcraft has cast out, a more primal and wild devil rather than many books that keep only the devil who does not provoke or offend. The sexual nature of him is discussed in quite a brutal way, and although I feel this is an antidote to the very fluffy images of the devil we often see in modern witchcraft, and therefore is worth mentioning for that reason. I also want to mention it because there's a relative amount of sexual themed stuff that's spoken about in quite a violent way. Think European witches' Sabbath. Coming from the place I come from, I felt I wanted to mention it because I know I have friends who've had very traumatic experiences, traumatic sexual experiences, and some of them wouldn't enjoy reading that kind of content. And I just think it's worth mentioning, really. I also feel that in the book, each chapter could stand alone as an essay, but together they make up a whole map, really. It's like a chapter is a place, and they come together. Each addresses a separate concept or symbol, and the poems included work their own magic. I wanted to read a selection from the Manifesto, which I feel gives an impression of what the book portrays. So this is Peter Gray's A Manifesto of Apocalyptic Witchcraft. If the land is poisoned, then witchcraft must respond. It is not our way of life, it is life itself which is under threat. Witchcraft is our intimate connection to the web of life. We are the witchcraft. Witchcraft is the recourse of the dispossessed, the powerless, the hungry, and the abused. It gives heart and tongue to stones and trees. It wears the rough skin of beasts. It turns on a civilization that knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. If you have no price, you cannot be bought. If you do not want to, you cannot be bribed. If you are not frightened, you cannot be controlled. The war is upon us. Choose then to become a mask. Witchcraft is the beauty which is terror. Witchcraft honours the spirits. Witchcraft enchants for the lost. Witchcraft will not forget. The practice of witchcraft is one of revolution and of the power of women. Witchcraft concerns itself with mystery. Through the gates of mystery we come to knowledge. Knowledge enters us through the body, and the highest form of this knowledge is love. Witchcraft is present, it is ensanguined and vivified. Witchcraft is prescient, it gazes on the future. Witchcraft is oracular, it will not hold its tongue. Our time has come. Now, the end of this book has a beautiful line which struck the chords of my heart, and it's something that I almost use as a meditation tool, actually, I suppose, to bring me into this moment here right now. But I'm not going to ruin that line for you in case you do want to read the book, but I will tell you it's the part in italics on page 169. Instead, I'm going to end the video with this line on page 12. Welcome to the apocalypse. This is the moment when we realise that the climate is broken. It's all blood and roses from here on in. As witches, we should prepare to fly on the wings of the storm.